Hey guys, welcome back to another week of the Truckers Ministry. I hope you had a just awesome week. You know, mine to say at least was pretty interesting. That's mildly, that's pretty interesting. Good news is my truck actually survived the journey on a nice long run. Bad news is not all of it came back. No, it's really silly if you think about it. Excuse me. When I was coming back yesterday, the wind in Kansas picked up pretty fiercely. And I remember, and I'm driving, I hear something that all of a sudden shifts. And I thought, okay, it's just something in the back, came loose and it's rattling now. I look at my mirror and I see one of the sleeper cab windows are open. And I was like, oh, geez, but when I'll pull over here in a second, next thing is I'll pull over and close it. It turns out though, I didn't have more than a second, or I didn't have the time to do that because within a few moments, the whole thing ripped off in the wind. And it's like, oh, great. Turns out those little boogers are expensive. That's like a $200 window. So it's like, great. So as I'm just kind of fuming, just like about that. The back cover on one of my mirrors came off because the same windstorm. It's like, oh, Lord have mercy. What the bleep. But good news is, mechanically the truck worked fine, and I made it back. That's the important part. I made it back. Might have been stressful, might have been scary, but I made it back. And I gotta thank God every day for that. It's probably because I got really homesick this last week, but you know what? I made it back. And keep telling myself that, I have faith in this. That God put me here for a reason, and I need to continue to follow that. But enough about my week, let's dive into it. So this week we are gonna finish up on Joshua in our Crablike Faith series with chapters 9 through 11. And here we see a couple of very important aspects. We see not only do we see defection of some Canaanite kings to Israel and to God, we see the destruction of two massive combined armies of the Canaanites. Israel not only whoops their butts, but they destroy them to almost a man. Which is just like, oh my goodness. So all the neighbors in the area are like, okay, maybe we shouldn't mess with these guys. Clearly their God is something to be fierce and, just so Israel, you do you. But one of the biggest things I want to touch on is one of the biggest things I want to touch on is the defection of one of the Canaanite city-states. Now, this was the Gibeonites. Yeah, they they're sitting there. They're probably like, they see what happened. Keep on where they're situated. They're like right here, Jericho. They're next. They're next in line. They're like, oh my gosh. We see what happened to them. The walls, this whole city came crashing down. Everyone died. The Israelites killed everybody. They wiped out this huge army. It's like, oh my gosh. Like, oh. Let's, what? We're going to come up with a deception. Let's make peace with the Israelites. We don't want to fight them. We're not going to make it. Their God's too powerful. Let's just make peace with them. And so in chapters 9, verses 3 through 20, we see not what they do exactly. They basically make their clothes look really old and ratty. They make their food look old and ratty. Their sandals, their livestock. And they go meet up with Joshua. And their whole plan was, hey, we come from a country far away. We're one of these Canaanite city-states a long ways away. We just want to make peace with you. We don't want to fight you. And Israel's like, how do we know you're actually who you say you are? And so they look at all their clothes, they look at all their provisions and everything, like, okay, you guys are, all right, cool. Yeah, you guys can, sure, we'll make peace with you. You guys can come a long way. But here's the thing. In verses 14 through 20, we see that the Israelites find out a couple days later that you guys were literally within a couple days march from us. Like, are you bleeping serious right now? You guys are that kind of guy? Really? And the Amorites are like, or the Gibeonites are like, well, are we going to keep your word? And Joshua, to his credit, here's the thing. What's really, really cool about this whole thing, Joshua has faith to keep his word with God. He trusts that he has faith in the Gibeonites that they're actually going to do what they say. They're going to defect over to Israel. And they're going to actually end up getting rid of our old God. They're pagan false gods, and they're going to actually worship the real God. And on the flip side, the Gibeonites, they had faith, keyword, they had faith that the Israelites were not going to just massacre them and destroy them for their ruse. Now, Joshua, in verse 24, he said, he lets them know that, hey, you guys, I don't appreciate this ruse. He says, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean 24. Let's start with verses 23, 22. Joshua summoned the Gibeonites and said, why did you deceive us by saying you live a long way from us? We actually live so near to us. You are now under a curse. Again, verse 23. He says, you are now under a curse. You will never cease to serve as woodcutters and water carriers for the house of my God. So basically, we're not going to kick your butt. We're going to keep our word, but you are going to be punished for this deception. The Gibeonites are like, you know what? We are cool with that. That's okay with us. And here's the thing: as we progress with the story, the other city-states are not happy about this. They say, well, if this one state's going to defect to them, all our other allies are going to defect to them. And so all the southern kings unite together, and they send their armies out. And like, well, where should we attack first? Let's attack the Gibeonites. Those guys, they betrayed us. We're going to attack them first. And another key aspect of faith, in chapter 10, verses 5, we see that the 5 kings of the Amorites, the kings of Jerusalem, Hebron, Jerimoth, Lachish, and Agon, joined forces, and they moved against the troops. They moved with all their troops against Gibeon and attacked it. The Gibeonites sent the words to Joshua, do not abandon your servants. Come help us quickly and save us. Help us because the Amorite kings are in the hill country and had joined forces against us. And one of the key things right here is that Gibeonites, they had faith. They trusted that God was going to, or not only was their new God, but Joshua was going to come and rescue them. Because Joshua could have said, I won't attack you. I got my word. But we can let these other guys attack you and take you out. But Joshua had, being filled with the Holy Spirit and keeping his promise, he marched up and he saw this army and said, oh my God, we need your help, Lord, because this is a massive army. But I have faith you're going to help deliver them to our hands. But just please help us, though. And so what does God do? In chapters 10, verses 13, the sun stops in the middle of the day. Middle of the sky and delay going down for the full day. Now, from a tactical perspective, this is brilliant. This is awesome that God helped them out with this, because Israelites are up here, Amorites are down here, sun stops right here. Israel could see down the valley just fine without any issues with the sun. The Amorites can't see up the hill because of the sun. So it's just like, thank you, God. And so in the confusion and the blindness, the entire army is destroyed. But unfortunately, some of them got away. Sorry. And throughout the rest of the chapter, we see them hunting down the rest of the armies and the rest of the kings and destroying them. And now, what's silly though is in the northern part of Canaan, all the kings are like, you know what? We'll have better luck against these guys. We'll have better luck against the Israelites. We're going to whoop their butts. And they assemble their armies, and they have hundreds of thousands of troops. Well, the Bible describes them as numerous as the grains of sand on the beach. Like, this is a massive army. All the city-states, all the kings of the north band together. And keep in mind, they have chariots. And now keep in mind, 3,000 years ago, chariots were the tanks of the ancient world. You can move fast in the battlefield. You can deliver death and destruction behind enemy lines very quickly. And if you're certain kings, you had these little knives called scythes on the side of the wheels that would roll and just take out the legs and everybody nearby. So it was a pretty formidable force to go against, especially when you have hundreds and thousands of these things come after you. But in chapters 11, verse 6, the Lord said to Joshua, sorry, I need my glasses. 27 now, I'm old. Do not be afraid of them, because by this time tomorrow, I will hand them all over to you. I'll hand them all over to Israel. Slain. You are to hamstring the horses and burn their chariots. So here's the thing. God specifically tells Joshua, hey, this army is going to get their butts kicked by you guys. I have your back. And that's what he's saying. At this point, Joshua, he's a little unnerved, but he's like, you know what? I have faith in God that you're going to deliver them in my hands. You haven't let us down so far. I do not think you'll let me down yet. I don't think you'll let us down anytime soon. So you have our back. And God's like, yeah, I do have your back. And don't you forget it. And as we continue to read through chapters 11, that whole northern army is utterly destroyed. I mean, when I say utterly destroyed, like, there's not one person makes it back home. And after that, the conquest, Canaan is done. Canaan is now officially belongs to Israel. And all the other countries in the area are like, hey, we don't want to mess with Israel, but let's make peace with you. We don't want to mess with you. We saw what your God did to these guys. We're cool, right? So, long story short, like, Joshua had the faith that God was going to deliver his enemies into his hands. And sure enough, and granted, it did take a little while. Because, back then, everyone's walking on foot, and Canaan, modern day Israel, is still a fairly decently sized area to walk across. And sure enough, God delivered it into their hands. And that's actually some of the points I want to bring up. One of the biggest points is example, like, if leading by example in how we live our lives and how we interact with others and how we worship in church. There might be some people having crisis of faith that might need help, but we don't realize they're looking to us and how we handle stress and how we keep our faith in difficult times. And as a result, when they see us handling it very well, when they see us handling it, despite all the hardships, despite, getting kicked in the nuts 100 times, despite all the crap that life can throw at us, if we still keep the faith, we help that other person keep their faith. It's like, you know what? Preston over here lost his truck his truck on fire and burned out. Lost all his money. He lost his car, and his wife just, she's hurt. Preston, how can you still have the faith that things suck for you right now? I know they stink, but I have faith that God's going to help me rebound into something even better than I was before. And the other person's like, really? After all that, you still have the faith? Yeah. And as a result, it's like, well, okay, if you can have the faith in all those bad situations, there's no reason why I can't. And so, and granted, it's a little different from the situation with Gibeon, but it's exactly one of the biggest points from this, is having the faith in Israelites, having their faith in their God, and that their God was going to deliver all their enemies in their hands. Gibeon saw that, well, shoot, if they're that faithful to their God, and their God can actually hear him, that's the thing, actually hear him, actually communicate with him, not through some drunken priest, but actually talk to him directly. Well, dang, maybe we should defect to them. Maybe we should have the faith in them, because, they seem a lot happier and a lot better off than what we'll be if they let us have their way. So, leading by example, having the faith even when things are terrible and it suck, and just right now with the COVID stuff, unfortunately, jobs are a little hard to find. Unfortunately, money's a little tight, and you have to wear stupid masks everywhere. But having the faith that all bad things are going to end up being better. You'll show your neighbors, you'll show those around you. You may not be thinking they're looking at you, but you need to show them all around you that God has a better plan than this. Things stink right now, but it's gonna be better. It's gonna get better. And sure enough, it always does get better. And after this, Gibeon, they assimilated with the Israelites and ended up being one of the most prosperous and powerful kingdoms in that area for the next few hundred years. Well, until the Philistines show up, and then things get a little more fun. But then when David comes in the picture, and things get better again. And Solomon, things get better. And just having that faith. That's the basic key. And here's the other thing, too, that's a huge, huge point of this. Now, we'll definitely want to leave on this for Joshua. Having faith. Another thing, these armies that Joshua fought, he destroyed the walled cities, he destroyed these massive armies. Keep in mind, these are massive armies, but they weren't massive armies. He had to end up going against armies of combined city-states, not just with one, but the combined armies of all these little kingdoms. Israel's outnumbered at times 10-1, maybe 50-1, maybe 100-1. Like they don't have enough troops for this. But Joshua and the people of Israel had the faith that no matter what stood in their way, no matter what issues they faced, God was going to have their back. God was going to deliver their enemies in their hands, and God was going to help them overcome. And that, again, that's one of the issue things that Gibeon saw, and they wanted to be a part of. They saw that the Israelites had faith that no matter what came their way, Joshua didn't blink. The Israelites might be like, oh, geez. Okay, God, you have my back, you have my back, you have my back. Let's go do this. But yeah, it's just having that faith that no matter what's in your way, no matter what obstacles are there, God will move the mountain to help you get to that point. And sorry, I jumped in a little bit. The biggest point I want to leave on, and this is huge, this is absolutely huge. It took a little bit of time for Israel to conquer all of Canaan. And when I say a little bit of time, I would say at least a year. Keep in mind, modern Israel is a decent sized area, especially for an army or a group of several tens of thousands of people moving by foot. They have their women, they have the children, men who are tired from battle, they want to rest, they got to rest their wounds, they have to make sure they can feed themselves, take care of themselves. It takes a long time for a group that large to move across this area. And one of the biggest things that we can take away from this whole series, this whole book, if you have the faith that God's going to, sorry, one more time. It's having faith that God's going to make the things he promised happen. It may not happen tomorrow. They may not happen next week. They may not even happen next month. But one of the things that Joshua and the Israelites were it was really cool to see him do and really cool to see him keep. Sorry, one more time. That sounded terrible in my ears. One of the things that are really cool to see Joshua and the Israelites have in this whole series, or in this whole book, is that even though things stink, even though things are hard, even though things are rough, and there's no end in sight, keeping that faith that one day God's going to deliver everything into your hands. It's going to help all your goals and all your ambitions that God put in your life. They're going to be achieved. They're going to happen. Whether it's a house, whether it's buying that new car, whether it's providing for your wife and your family, having that faith that things are going to happen in God's time is paramount. And that's one of the things that God tests us. He wants us to see that, hey, do you trust me that I'm going, for example, Preston, do you trust me that I'm going to provide you that house in Wyoming? Do you trust me that I'm put you in a position where Bigfoot Pet is going to get off the ground? Do you trust me that I'm going to help you buy that land outside of Laramie? Do you trust me that this truck driving job is going to be worth it? Do you trust me? And yes. So, honestly, a year ago, 2 years ago, I didn't think I could be in this position. I did not think I could afford this. I had the faith that God would provide it for me, and sure enough, I have a decent-sized bank account now. Granted, I might be drained by the end of the week when all the bills go out. But it just, God put me in a position that was better than I could imagine 2 years ago. And, I'm not the most, those of you who know me, I'm not the most patient person in the world. But, learning to keep the patience with God and learning that, having faith that God's going to make all my dreams and ambitions and goals that he put in my head come true, that's awesome. And that's one of the biggest things about Joshua that are key. Like I said, it took probably about a year or so for him to conquer all of that area. But the whole time, they had the faith that God was going to deliver it to them, that was going to give me their entire land. And sure enough, it was. Heck, it is still their land to this day. And that's amazing, right? Even 3,000 years later, God is still keeping his promises to the Jews, the Hebrews. And that is just amazing. But yeah, next week we are going to move on from move on from Joshua, and we're going to move on to the book of Job for Crablike Faith Part 4. And for those who don't know Job, this is a guy who seriously had to have some faith. I mean, literally, when people think their whole, like right now with the coronavirus stuff, excuse me, one second. We think that the world sucks in situations with the coronavirus. Man lost their job, man money, things like that. This is a dude who literally lost everything. And guess what? He still had the faith in God. Even when everybody was telling him, why do you have faith in God? Don't have faith in God. God's not doing anything for you. He still kept his faith. And guess what? God rewarded him mightily for it. So yeah, next week we're going to start touching on that for Crablike Faith Part 4. As always, you guys all have a wonderful next week, and I shall see you next time.